The night I discovered my marriage was built on a lie, I thought I had reached the lowest point of my life, because my husband Marcus Vale looked at me after hearing my news and calmly told me that I was no longer welcome in the home we had shared for years. I had spent 5 years believing we were creating a future together in our quiet lakeside town outside Madison, Wisconsin, but as I packed a small bag and drove away with nowhere to stay, I realized I had been living inside someone else's carefully designed illusion. My name is Elena Brooks, and before everything changed, I worked as a landscape designer who spent my days creating beautiful outdoor spaces while secretly ignoring the cracks growing inside my own home. Marcus worked in private investments and always seemed confident, organized, and several steps ahead of everyone around him, which was exactly why I never imagined that his greatest plan would be the destruction of our own marriage. For months before the disaster, I noticed strange changes that I explained away because I wanted to believe the person I loved was simply overwhelmed by work and pressure. He started disappearing for long phone calls, locking his office door, and receiving letters that he would quickly hide whenever I entered the room, yet every time I asked, he gave me a simple answer that sounded believable. One evening, I found him staring at an old photograph from my past, and instead of asking why he was looking at it, he immediately placed it face down and changed the subject with a nervous laugh. The picture was from years earlier when I had been married to Julian Mercer, a man I had loved when I was younger but separated from peacefully after realizing we wanted completely different lives. Julian and I had not spoken in more than a decade, and after our divorce, he moved across the country to build a technology company that eventually became successful. I never followed his career, never checked his wealth, and never expected that his name would suddenly become the center of a mystery that would completely transform my future. When I discovered I was expecting a baby, I was filled with fear and happiness because I believed Marcus would finally become the warm and excited partner I had always hoped he could be. I prepared a small surprise at home with a handwritten note and a tiny pair of baby shoes, imagining the moment we would begin planning the next chapter of our family. Instead of celebrating, Marcus looked at the gift, placed it on the table, and said with a cold expression that he did not believe the baby was his. I waited for him to smile and reveal that he was joking, but his silence made it clear that he had already decided how he wanted the story to end. He accused me of betrayal, demanded that I leave immediately, and spoke as if the years we shared were nothing more than a business arrangement that had reached its conclusion. That evening, I sat alone in my car near an empty riverside parking area, trying to understand how the person who once promised to protect me could suddenly treat me like a stranger. The next morning, after barely resting, I forced myself to think logically instead of emotionally because I knew panic would only make the situation worse. I realized that Marcus had not reacted like a hurt husband who was confused, but like someone following a plan he had prepared long before I ever learned about it. I remembered all the questions he had asked about Julian, especially the strange curiosity about whether my former husband had ever contacted me or left me anything after our divorce. At the time, I thought it was insecurity, but now those conversations looked like someone searching for information he believed was valuable. I contacted a legal advisor named Natalie Pierce, a sharp attorney I had met during a community business event, and she agreed to meet me immediately. When I explained everything, she listened carefully and told me that Marcus's actions suggested there might be a financial motive hidden behind the accusation. The first thing Natalie asked me to do was check our shared accounts, and when I opened the banking app, I saw that most of our savings had disappeared overnight. The money had been transferred into an unfamiliar account shortly after he forced me to leave, proving that his actions were not a sudden emotional reaction. Natalie explained that moving shared funds without agreement could create serious legal consequences, and she helped me preserve every record before Marcus had the chance to erase anything. She also advised me to investigate Julian's estate because there was a possibility that my former husband's past decisions were connected to everything happening now. I reached out to Julian's older brother Samuel, the only person from that chapter of my life whose contact information I could still find. His voice became quiet when he answered because he told me Julian had passed away several months earlier and his legal team had been searching for me. The news shocked me because I had no idea Julian was gone, and I felt a strange sadness for someone who had once been an important part of my life. Samuel explained that Julian had never forgotten the kindness I showed him during our marriage and had created legal documents that included me as a beneficiary. The following call came from an estate representative named Victor Hale, who explained that Julian had left behind a significant trust created from the sale of his company. He told me the inheritance was worth approximately $50 to million. But there was one unusual requirement that needed to be completed before anything could be transferred. Victor explained that Julian wanted me to personally confirm my identity and attend a private meeting because he believed honesty was more valuable than convenience. The condition was not designed to block me from receiving the money, but to ensure that only the person he trusted could claim what he left behind. As I listened, I finally understood why Marcus had been obsessed with my past and why his behavior had changed so suddenly. He had discovered information about Julian's estate before I did, and likely believed that removing me from his life would somehow allow him to benefit. I returned to my lawyer with the new information, and Natalie immediately began preparing documents to protect my rights and separate my future from Marcus's control. For the first time in days, I felt something stronger than fear because I realized I was no longer trapped in the situation he created. Marcus later contacted me and tried to explain that he had made mistakes because he was under pressure, but his words felt empty after everything I had uncovered. I told him that trust is not something someone can destroy and rebuild whenever it becomes convenient for them. The months that followed were filled with legal meetings, personal healing, and preparations for my child's arrival, and I slowly rebuilt a life that belonged entirely to me. The fortune Julian left behind changed my circumstances, but the greatest gift was discovering my own strength after someone tried to convince me I had none. I eventually moved into a new home near the countryside, started a design studio of my own, and created a peaceful environment where my child could grow surrounded by love. Looking back, I no longer saw that painful night as the moment my life ended, but as the moment I finally escaped a future that was never truly mine. The hardest lessons often arrive disguised as disasters, and I learned that the people who truly value you will never make you beg for basic respect or honesty. My story became a reminder that sometimes losing what feels like everything is the exact moment when you begin receiving everything you were meant to have. Please subscribe to our channel and share this video with your friends and family. We create entertaining and inspiring stories for our viewers, and your support helps us continue making great content for you.